Welcome. This is Courtney Neubauer with the Division of Nutrition Support, and today we're going to go over many topics for our nutrition support monthly call. This is a different week than what we normally have, so our monthly calls are usually the first Tuesday of the month, but due to Mardi Gras, we pushed it back a week. So April, we will be going back to the first Tuesday of the month. In the chat box, I have included the link to today's presentation if you'd like to follow along. And once we finish today, we'll have the PowerPoint and the recording posted on Louisiana Fit Kids. So let's get started. Kind of going to follow a very similar agenda to what we normally do. We're going to first discuss where we are with our state oversight plan. We're going to briefly touch on pandemic EBT or PEBT. Mention once again where we are in the Medicaid demonstration project, the supply chain assistance funds. So I know you're all probably waiting for that money, and so we'll update you on where we are with that process. Just a few reminders about the flexibilities that are available for this school year, and we're going to move into talking about the traditional standards on milk, whole grain, and sodium. Talk about eScholar updates and the new CEP manager portal. We'll remind everybody of upcoming trainings, and then just a few other program reminders. So to start, our state oversight plan, our reviews are well on their way. So all of the review dates are posted on our website as well as on the CNR support page. The review date that's listed in the CNR support page and also our website is the Monday of the review week. So CN Resource will reach out or has been reaching out to all of you to schedule the actual day that the site visits will occur. The reviews are coming in to us at the state agency. They are really great. So everybody's doing a wonderful job. And we have reviews scheduled through April. So we are coming kind of to the end of the review cycle. I have had a few questions about maybe receiving the summary of findings or the final report. We are reviewing those at the state agency and approving those before CN Resources providing those out. So as we review the entire review from start to finish, we are then approving it, and the final report will be sent to each of you. Okay, so now we'll move on to pandemic EBT or PEBT. The first section that we'll talk about is PEBT 2021. So that is the pandemic EBT that is really over. That was for last school year, but a lot of families did recently receive letters about unused balances, which may be expiring. So you may have been receiving calls from parents saying that they had received this letter. In many cases, the amount left on those cards was less than $1, but DCFS still did send the letters to those families. If they have their card, they can call the number on their card. If the parent has lost their card, they can still check the balance on the PEBT parent portal, and then they can request a new card to be sent. They are still accepting address changes. So if there's an address that is incorrect, the parent needs to update that information with each school, and then the school should send the address update and then a new card request as well. So that's all we're going to talk about regarding PEBT 2021. So that process is pretty much over. You just have kind of a few families that may still be spending some of those benefits, but what we're really starting to talk about now will be PEBT 21-22. So that is this school year. That's the PEBT benefits that will start being issued later this month to families that qualified for this school year that we're in right now. So DCFS has developed announcement flyers. Those have been posted on their website. They have also updated their website. So we have multiple different flyers that are now available. There's a black and white announcement, color announcement. There's also a Spanish and Vietnamese version. So just a good way for you to share with all your families what's coming with PEBT. They're seeing it on social media and other avenues, so it helps to have the school systems push that same information to them as well. So DCFS did receive approval for PEBT for 21-22. And the process is a little bit different for qualification as it was for the previous school year. So we still have the requirement that a child has to be eligible for free or reduced price meals, or they have to be in a school that is a CEP school, and then they have to also have some form of virtual learning that has been occurring, whether it be to quarantine or some other reason related to the pandemic. So eligible children are going to get benefits on a few different tiers. So the first one is going to be if they're fully virtual. So if they've been learning fully virtually all school year or for each month, they'll get $127.80 per month. And then from there, they will, if they're quarantined for any period of time and they're not fully virtual, their benefits will depend on how many days they were quarantined in a month. So for example, I have a 5-year-old who was quarantined 3 times since January, returning from winter break. And so he only went to school 4 days in the month of January. And so in the month of January, his benefits, because he does attend a CEP school, he would fall into the second tier. So for January, he would receive $71 per month, but he has been in school for the rest of the previous part of the school year. So he would not receive benefits for any of those months of January through December. He would only receive benefits for the month of January, from August through December. He would only receive benefits for the month of January. So the benefits will be retroactive. So just as we saw last year, where they were retroactive to the beginning of the school year, they're also going to be retroactive for this school year. The benefits are retroactive, but statuses will not be retroactive. So just as we qualified children for free and reduced, normally that's going to be the same qualification that has to happen in all those non-CEP schools. And being that we've been on Seamless Summer, there's probably a chance that most of our families have not submitted applications and may start submitting applications right now. We're going to approve those applications just as we did in any other school year, and they're not, those statuses will not be retroactive back to the beginning of the school year. So eligibility, the student to be eligible for PEBT, they have to have an approved application for free or reduced price meals. If they don't have a free or reduced meal application and they're in a non-CEP school, then they would be missing that first part of the eligibility criteria. All students in a community eligibility provision are eligible for PEBT if they meet this second criteria. So first is that they have to be either a free and reduced price meal application or in a CEP school. And then second, they have to be on some kind of school approved virtual or out of school under some kind of quarantine that was 100% related to the COVID pandemic. So they were home with their families because they thought maybe they had COVID, or they were waiting for the results of a test, or they were sent home for quarantine. Whatever was the case, those are the days that would count toward the benefits. Each school has their own COVID protocol, so that's how that's going to be determined whether a child qualifies for a certain day or not. So we're trying not to provide benefits for children that may have been out for reasons unrelated to the pandemic. So this is pandemic EBT, so it is meant to support children out of school due to the COVID pandemic. So I'm once again reminding, I know I've reminded this over and over again, but we need to make sure that we have applications available to certify children for free and reduced price meals. We should have been doing this all year, and I know we've reminded you that on a regular basis, but now as we are starting to gear up for pandemic EBT, I expect that there will be families wanting to reach out to complete those applications. The data managers have regularly been communicating with the PEBT team, but just so all of you are aware of kind of what the timeline looks like, the spreadsheets can start being completed for August through February. And starting in April, on Tuesday nights, the benefits will be loaded onto cards. So either existing cards, or if a new card is needed, it'll be loaded on a new card, and they'll start mailing out those new cards. Starting in April, that's when our school systems can start submitting benefits on a monthly basis. So you'd submit in March, in April for the March benefits. May, you would submit the April benefits. So as always, y'all, our child nutrition directors kind of get asked some of the questions related to PEBT. A lot of the calls come your way. So just want to make sure that you're all informed. The PEBT office hours, so the DCFS team does have a weekly office hour, Tuesdays at 10 a.m. It's really beneficial. You can listen in. Most of your data managers will be on that call, but feel free to listen in as well. The Medicaid demonstration project. So this is a project that is really near and dear to my heart. So on December 14th, USDA announced that we were one of the 8 states selected to participate in the expansion of the demonstration project. I know we all hoped that this would be something we could use this year to qualify children, but this will be used next year. So school year 22-23, we will be able to use Medicaid data to directly certify children. So we're working on that diligently to get that into the eScholar system, so we can hopefully see an increase of free and reduced children related to qualifications for Medicaid. Supply chain assistance funds. So we received our last attestation from a school system on Friday. So we will be really hoping in the end of this week, the beginning of next week, that we'll be able to start issuing those payments. So as a reminder, Louisiana received about $16 million in supply chain assistance funds, and these funds were to be distributed to schools as well as our residential child care institutions that participate in National School Lunch, and that is used to support the purchase of food due to the increased costs related to the pandemic. So hopefully this money can help kind of offset some of those increased expenses. The requirement around what items can be spent, can be purchased with these funds is very particular. So it has to be exclusively used to purchase domestic food products, and they have to be either unprocessed or minimally processed. So that would be fluid milk or other dairy products such as cheese and yogurt, fruits and vegetables. This includes 100% juices, as well as fresh, frozen, canned, dried fruit. A lot of the fruit juices are not 100% domestic, so do make sure that if you are going to use it on fruit juices, that it does meet that domestic criteria. You can also use it for grain, such as pastas and rice, or meats, whole meat, pieces of meat, so chicken, drumettes, other food items such as ground meat, or meat alternatives like beans and legumes. So typically we have a requirement to purchase domestic, but there is the ability to purchase products that are not domestic, as long as you have completed that, you've completed that Buy American certification, and the product is either too expensive domestically or it's not available. That is not the case when it comes to these funds. So every item that is purchased using these supply chain funds must be domestic. So it has to be made or manufactured in the United States. So examples of items that are not permitted. So generally speaking, these are items that are significantly processed or prepared. This would include pizzas or chicken nuggets or even bread products, baked goods like breads, muffins, or crackers. So for the most part, most of our school systems are heavily focusing on using this money to support the purchase of milk, since that's a little bit easier. But there are some school systems who are using this to purchase other produce or other items that just require a little bit more tracking to ensure that it is domestic. These funds are specifically for the National School Lunch School Breakfast Program, so they can only be used to purchase products for those programs. This does include the Seamless Summer option and the National School Lunch After School Snack Program, which are programs within the National School Lunch Program, but they cannot be used to support other child nutrition programs. So the funds cannot be used for the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program, the Summer Food Service Program, or the Child and Adult Care Food Program. School systems are required to maintain documentation to support those food purchases to ensure that it is used for the unprocessed or minimally processed domestic food products, and that you are maintaining the requirements for record keeping. The funds are going to be deposited into that nonprofit food service account, and they do not need to be tracked separately from other monies within that account. So the same account where your reimbursement is going to be where these funds are deposited, and you don't have to track them separately. So what we are encouraging is a lot of school systems are starting to use a spreadsheet, so an Excel sheet to kind of draw down the monies and keep track of the invoices that are specifically related to the domestic purchases. We have a few memos out. So memo SFS 22-54 and memo SFS 22-83, which are both related to the supply chain assistance funds. We also have a training that was posted on Louisiana Fit Kids. So that's from Wednesday, January 26th. We also will have another training this coming Thursday. So it is somewhat of a repeat of the January 26th training, although we'll be focusing on where we are in the process. So not as much on the process for submitting those attestations, since we have received all of the attestations to date. And we hope that we will start making payments very, very soon. School year 21-22 food service flexibilities. I like to remind everyone what the flexibilities are and that these aren't within our normal operation. We are expecting that the waivers are going to expire effective June 30th. I know there's a lot of talk among SNA and FRAC and all kinds of other organizations about the extensions of these waivers and giving USDA waiver authority past June 30th. But right now, all of the nationwide waivers are set to expire June 30th, 2022. So some of the meal service flexibilities that are still in place until that June 30th date, the non-congregate feeding, meal service time flexibilities, parent guardian pickup. We do have some flexibilities with meal pattern, which can be helpful, especially with all of these supply chain issues that we're seeing. Pandemic EBT, so we know that PEBT will be here at least through the summer, so summer 2022. School systems are operating Seamless Summer right now and receiving that higher SFSP reimbursement. So that will end effective June 30th as well. And then the after school programs, Many of them are operating where all the children are receiving free meals regardless of location and learning model. So as of now, if the waivers are not extended, we would expect that come July 1, those traditional congregate feeding settings would resume and follow normal program regulations. A reminder about delivery of meals. So if school systems want to deliver meals, this is currently allowable because of two waivers. So the combination of the non-congregate feeding waiver and the mealtime flexibility waiver. And those two waivers together allow for the option to provide meals through delivery. If families are going to receive meals, they have to opt in, so they have to consent to receiving those meals. And we do need to approve all delivery plans before meals are provided to households. So you must submit your plan to the state agency prior to providing meals, and we will then approve those plans or ask for clarification before the delivery of meals begins. If you submit a plan and then your plan changes after the approval of that plan, then you need to submit a new plan to the state agency. So we're approving your process based on what you submit. If you change that process, then you need to resubmit so we can approve your new process. A reminder of the specific school meal pattern flexibilities. So there are very specific meal pattern flexibilities that are available, and we are accepting those through our online waiver request system. At this point in the school year, most school systems have opted into the waivers that they expect to use. And if there are situations that do arise related to supply chain issues, and you have already submitted your meal pattern flexibility, you can contact us and we can release it back to you, and you can make edits to that meal pattern flexibility based on new needs. The congressional flexibility, it keeps being extended. So the original extension was through September 30th, 2021, and it was extended then through February and now to March. So this allows for specifically what keeps changing is the ability to serve low-fat 1% flavored milk in the National School Lunch and School Breakfast Program, and also prohibits funds from being used to procure raw or processed poultry products from the People's Republic of China. There are two other things that were included in that original congressional flexibility, but those did approve the use of vegetables for fruit in the school breakfast program, but that is extended for the entire school year. And also the guidance related to the paid lunch prices was for the entire school year as well. We, as a state agency, as these reviews have been started, we are waiving fiscal action if it's related to supply chain issues. So we have the ability to waive fiscal action as part of the administrative review due to supply chain disruptions and following the meal pattern. So you know, what we're asking is if that's the case, that there's strong documentation to show that it was a supply chain disruption that caused the inability to follow the meal pattern. CACFP also has very specific meal pattern flexibilities. These are very similar to what we've seen the entire school year. So for the most part, in March, we've developed a pretty good routine as to how to best meet the meal patterns. Just as with National School Lunch under CACFP, the state agency is trying to work to provide more technical assistance in lieu of fiscal action when there is non-compliance related to meal pattern requirements that are due to supply chain disruptions related to the pandemic. So as a reminder, USDA currently does not have waiver authority past June 30th, 2022. So at this time, all USDA nationwide waivers end on June 30th. So there are also no nationwide waivers for Summer Food Service Program 2022. USDA will still allow states to request the following waivers. So these are the waivers that were available pre-COVID. So these are the 4 waivers that were initially kind of a blanket approval, and then those were rescinded, and there's a waiver process, but these 4 waivers will also be available this summer. So that's the first week site review waiver, the area eligibility for closed enrolled sites, the meal service time restriction waiver, and offer versus serve waiver. We will discuss these 4 waivers in the upcoming summer food service training. So at this time, those are the only waivers that are available for summer, and all waivers related to the school year will end on June 30th. There's a comment about whether or not school districts should contact USDA. I think that if there's anything that you feel really strongly about, there's avenues with SNA or contacting USDA directly to support the needs of the programs. So there's definitely a lot of organizations asking for support or giving information on who to contact to have these waivers extended. So the next topic, transitional standards on milk, whole grains, and sodium final rule. So this is that new exciting meal pattern standards that have come out, and that will be mainly for next school year. So this rule provides certainty for the next 2 school years while USDA works to come up with permanent standards. So we have provided some information related to this transitional rule. We are also hosting a training on Thursday, March 17th at 1 p.m. on the traditional standards. And the registration, I believe, was posted yesterday. So it is now available for you to register for that. We also just yesterday sent out a transitional standards survey. So that is something that we are strongly encouraging you all to complete. And this survey has some questions that are very open-ended, allow you to provide your feedback on the standards, and then we are in turn going to use those answers to provide to USDA during a listening session that we have on Thursday. So we're asking for those comments to be submitted no later than tomorrow, so we can have them in time for the listening session on Thursday. So the transitional standards, there's 3 key components, 3 areas that will be addressed in those. The first is the flavored milk. So this allows SFAs to offer flavored, low-fat, 1% milk at lunch and breakfast. It requires that unflavored milk also be available. So you already have to have 2 different varieties of milk. And so this is requiring that one of those varieties be an unflavored milk, and the other could be a flavored milk or an unflavored choice. If you want to have more than 2 choices, that's fine too, as long as one of them is an unflavored choice. The transitional milk requirements will also be used in the child and adult care food program for children ages 6 and older. And then it also clarifies that lactose-free and reduced lactose fluid milk do meet the requirement for CACFP in addition to the other programs. Whole grains is the second provision, and this requires that at least 80% of the weekly grains in the National School Lunch and School Breakfast be whole grain rich, and the remaining 20% can be enriched grain. A whole grain product are those products that have at least 50% whole grain, and the remainder of those grains are enriched. So this is very close to the 100%. If you're concerned about meeting this 80% requirement, then I definitely encourage you to reach out to USDA on that as well. And I think what we've heard is the biggest area of concern is related to sodium. So right now, we will retain sodium target 1 through school year 22-23, and then we will We will also retain sodium target 1 for school breakfast into school year 23-24. And then it institutes a interim target 1A for school year 23-24. So with the supply chain issues and many of the other labor issues, this seems to be the area of most concern. So if this is a concern for you, I encourage you to speak up and submit comments to USDA. So USDA is inviting comments on this final rule, and this will help provide insight as they work toward developing the permanent meal standards. So right now, they have not received a lot of comments, so just a few, but they can be submitted until March 24th. And I do strongly encourage you to submit comments. The comments that are submitted related to this transitional rule will help guide USDA on the final rule. So if we're concerned about anything in these transitional rules, this is the opportunity to speak up so that USDA is aware of the concerns as they start making a long-term plan. eScholar updates and CEP Manager. I know we've already had one training on that on February 22nd, and we'll have a repeat training on March 22nd. So we have been working for a few years now on a project that will improve the matching system. So currently, the system is used for matching SNAP and TANF. We will use this for matching Medicaid for next school year, but we've also started to use this to match, to bring in children who are in foster care, migrant, also a DC extended and a manual matching component. So we will be releasing the CEP Manager tool within eScholar in time for the April CEP population data. So we are asking school systems to ensure that all student matches, which includes the manual matches and the address matches, are in eScholar so that you can ensure that the correct population data will be in the system. The next training, the CEP training on March 22nd, will focus on this process and the new CEP Manager system. We also have the recordings and the slides from the February 22nd training, and those are posted on Louisiana Fit Kids. So for the eScholar system, what's coming? We encourage you to look over the direct match training for end users, which is a complete training on the eScholar system. All of our identified students must be reported in eScholar so that they automatically feed into the new CEP Manager system. And as of April 1st, we want to make sure that all of the enrollment and all of the identified students are up to date so that information is pulled correctly into the CEP Manager system. So there's a few ways for you to ensure that all identified students are captured. The first is through our match options, especially person ID. Secondly is through DSNAP, which is different from PSNAP or PEBT, so pandemic EBT, and then this is disaster EBT, so they're very different. So disaster SNAP is going to be the families that qualified for PEBT as a result of specifically the hurricanes, whereas pandemic EBT is related to the pandemic and providing benefits to children who are missing that from not being in school. So the first area that we want to address is making sure that we have all of the direct match counts. So you want to resubmit your current students to Unique ID and make sure that they all have an ID assignment. And then you also want to make sure that you claim the master record. So the CEP system is going to use the master record to match against SNAP and TANF. There's also history records in there. So if the child maybe has moved around a lot, there may be history records on that child for multiple different schools or multiple different school systems. You want to ensure that you have that student and you claim their master record if that child is enrolled in your school system. So only one school system is going to be able to match that one student. So if the student is enrolled with you as of April 1st, you want to make sure that you're claiming that master record. You want to run the direct match for SNAP and TANF. Make sure that you're resolving all of your near matches, and then you can download those records from the search function, and you can have a complete list of the students who match. As a reminder, all SFAs that are operating the Seamless Summer option are still required to run the direct match monthly. So the newest file was made available today. So February file was actually made available just a little while ago. So we do have a few school systems who have not run direct match this school year. This is still a federal requirement and needs to be done. And it is very important that this is done before that April 1st date, when we will be pulling that information into the CEP manager system. Manual authorization is also a process that we can use to make sure that we're capturing all those students. So this allows for the SFA to add a direct match flag to a particular child, and then the user can enter the secure ID and then click match. We're going to use that manual authorization process also for DSNAP. So disaster SNAP is basically the same, considered the same as regular SNAP eligible children. So to qualify children via DSNAP for this school year, each district was provided a file of the DSNAP eligible children. So initially, the file was part of the big economically disadvantaged file, but just last week, each school system had a file that was dropped into the district's FTP site that was just the DSNAP children. We also did this for the non-public districts. And for the non-publics, this is located in your non-public FTP site. And the file is located in the folder that is your LEA number and then 001. So the first file underneath your FTP site is going to be the folder where this DSNAP file is located. The students that qualify for DSNAP do need to be manually added to eScholar using the manual authorization. So the way that would work is once you do the first part that we talked about right here, where you're putting in that student ID number and clicking match. From there, you can add a match type. You can put a start date, and you can put your match reason in here as a DSNAP and click update. The third way that we're going to work on increasing the identified students is to identify our DC extended children. So these are our siblings and other children who are living in the same household. So the address matches uses address of students who are already in unique ID, and it compares those to addresses of students in the SNAP file. So these matched records are going to be used in the CEP calculation. So this is going to increase the number of identified students. LDOE is running the address match monthly, and then districts can resolve the near matches just as they do the near matches for the SNAP file. You want to be careful when resolving those near matches. Sometimes those addresses are in apartment buildings and there may not be any unit number. Sometimes there's many children at the same address. And so you want to use your own district records to ensure that those benefits should be extended before matching those children. So for address matching, the system is not going to automatically match. It's going to basically produce a near match file just as it does with the SNAP record. So you'll be able to go through and determine if the benefits should be extended or not to those children. So this is what extended, the DC extended match will look like. So the state will be making those matches, and it will then produce a file like this that has a, a percent of how close it matched to whether the eligible address and the matched address, how closely they were to each other. So from there, you can click this little drill down button. It'll give you the student information, so you can compare the student that was matched to the student that is in the unique ID file to determine if those are siblings and that if those benefits should be extended. That my goal with the eScholar piece was to just give you enough of a teaser to make you come back on March 22nd for the full training, so you can get all of the information you need to do. So I'm hoping I just, you have a little bit of curiosity and you really need to know more, and that you'll come and listen on the 22nd, or that you'll go back to Louisiana Fit Kids and listen to the recording from the February 22nd training. So training updates, we have a lot of great trainings coming up. We have changed our process slightly for the month of March. I think that most of us have already figured that out, because we do have close to 100 people who are here today. So our process did change just slightly. So we are still posting the agenda and the Zoom registration on Louisiana Fit Kids, but we have removed the registration link. And the reason why is because once you click on the link to Zoom, Zoom's registering you and you're having to complete all the information there. So we're getting the information through Zoom. So we decided to remove the additional registration piece, save time, and not require you to enter that information into the Louisiana Fit Kids site first before you registered again during Zoom. Once the training is complete, you will still receive a follow-up email confirming attendance, the training hours, and the training codes that are linked to those trainings. And we do still ask that you complete the survey on the training once the training is complete. All of the registrations for our March trainings are now open, and we do have all the training slides and recorded videos posted to Louisiana Fit Kids. Occasionally, I know I personally forget to push the resume recording button. So if there's a training that doesn't have the recording, it's probably a total accident and I forgot to push resume recording. So hopefully it's one that we repeat so we can catch it again at the next time. So March trainings that we have coming up, we have a full month of training. So the first one, which I've already mentioned, is this Thursday, March 10th. It's a repeat of the Supply Chain Assistance Fund training. This is going to be slightly modified from the last training, just because now everybody has submitted those attestation statements. Thursday, March 17th, we're having a training on the transitional standards on milk, grains, and sodium. Tuesday, March 22nd, we're going to have a training on the community eligibility provision with focus on the new CEP manager, which I've already mentioned. On Thursday, March 29th, we have a summer food service training for our returning sponsors. And on Wednesday, March 30th, we have a summer food service training for our prospective new sponsors. All of the trainings are at 1 o'clock. The registrations are all open on Louisiana Fit Kids, so you can go register for all of them now. Our next monthly call is going to be Tuesday, April 5th at 1 o'clock. So other program reminders, we're wrapping up for today. Hopefully I've not given you too much information and it's not all falling out of your brain. To start, we'll talk about the reimbursement rates. So as a reminder, the reimbursement rates for the summer food service program have been released effective January 1. These are the rates that are also used for the seamless summer option under that nationwide waiver. So the rest of this school year, for all of our schools that are operating the summer food service program, the seamless summer option with the summer food service program rates. These are the rates. So they have gone up slightly since December. Since we're in March, most of our school systems are submitting or have already submitted those January claims. So do make sure that you've updated your systems to account for this higher reimbursement, or what you think you're going to get in reimbursement may be very different from what you actually receive from appropriation control. Feel like in March, we probably don't need a whole lot of reminders about how to claim, but we are still finding that there are errors pretty regularly on claims. So we're having to reach out to sponsors to have them revise, particularly the eligibles and the attendance located on the claim. We cannot have double entry of breakfast, lunch, or snack. So if you're operating Seamless Summer in the green section, then there should not be breakfast and lunch in the National School Lunch section of the claim, which is white. Same thing if you're operating the National School Lunch Program After School Snack Program and you're claiming that under National School Lunch, you should not also be claiming those same meals under CACFP at-risk after school snacks. Throw in these 4 Q&A memos in here again. So this is, something that I think I've done every month. These are the 4 Q&A memos that have been released for this school year by USDA. This is my go-to for just about any question that comes our way. So I like to include that in here so you always have a quick reference for all 4 of these and you're not having to search for them through our website. So I've tried to include those regularly so you can look at those as questions arise. Procurement update. So on February 15th, Governor John Bel Edwards did extend the emergency provisions due to COVID-19 in Proclamation 18 JBE 2022. And so this did still include a suspension of the Louisiana Public Bid Law, which allows for emergency procurement. This proclamation is through March 16th, which is next week. So we will be looking again for either an extension or information about whether or not it's not extended on or before March 16th. Also, from a federal standpoint, just a reminder that you are allowed to use emergency non-competitive procurement related to COVID-19 right now as well. We're real close to getting to where you're going to be submitting those March claims. So just want to remind everyone that health inspections need to be included and submitted to our website. So you are required to request in writing 2 health inspections per year. And that information on those dates that those health inspections were provided need to be submitted through the child nutrition website. So with the March claim, you will get a reminder that you need to submit those. And then in April, you will not be able to submit the claim until you have entered those health inspection dates. So if you have already received those health inspections, I encourage you to go ahead and put those dates in so it doesn't slow you down with submitting your March and April claim. It's already Tuesday, but this is school breakfast week. And then March is National Nutrition Month. So this is our month to shine. So I hope that through all of the craziness of this pandemic, that there's some fun stuff going on this week in schools. And so I hope you will submit those pictures or stories to Kathy Carmichael so she can highlight those on Louisiana Fit Kids. We'd love to see all the exciting things that you're doing this week and this month for both School Breakfast Week and National Nutrition Month. The income eligibility guidelines have come out for next school year. So those are to begin July 1st, 2022 and we'll go through June 30th of 2023. These are what we'll use to qualify families for free and reduced price meals in school year 22-23. We've recently had a lot of questions regarding SAM. So SAM, or the System for Awards Management, is a tracking system that is a federal tracking system that is a requirement of contracts that are equal to or exceed $25,000. So it is a requirement that if a contractor, for any contracts that are expected to be of $25,000 or greater, the contractor needs to be active in SAM. This does include any small procurements in addition to formal procurements if that contract will exceed the $25,000 threshold. Another requirement or update about SAM is transitioning from using the DUNS number to the unique entity ID, or what they're calling the UEI. So the UEI is now a 12-digit number, and this is replacing the 9-digit DUNS number within the SAM system. So the UEI is going to be provided as part of the registration with SAM. So if you are on this call, more than likely you're receiving federal funds from us. So there is still a requirement to be registered with SAM. But now, instead of using the DUNS number, it's going to use this new 12-digit UEI as a requirement instead. Okay, that is the end of our training for today. I've left some time for questions. I do see that a few have come in, so please continue to submit your questions. I'm going to read through them and see what I can answer. If you do come up with any questions after today, you can email at childnutritionprograms@la.gov, or you can call us at 225-342-9661. Let's see if I can answer any of these questions. There's a question about virtual schools and PEBT. So the goal of PEBT is to provide benefits to families who are not receiving school meals due to the pandemic. So if children are enrolled in virtual schools and that child would not be receiving benefits at all, unrelated to the pandemic, then they would not qualify. If a child is put in a virtual school setting because of COVID, then that child would qualify. But generally, if a family has elected to go to virtual school, just because it's an option and it's not related to COVID, then they would not qualify for the benefits. There's a question about if there's a way to determine how many of our children are on Medicaid. I encourage you to reach out to your data coordinator. So part of the economically disadvantaged file does include the Medicaid children. So they're using that for funding purposes outside of child nutrition. So they could probably give you a pretty good idea of how many children are qualifying for Medicaid outside of what you're already collecting for some of the other programs. There's a question about how to find out how many comments were submitted. So on the transitional standards, so that link on this slide that I had about the transitional standards, when you click on that, it'll bring you straight to the comment page. And at the top, it does tell you how many comments have been received. And I believe you can even click on it and see what some of the comments are. I'm not 100% sure on the being able to read them, but I know you can see how many were submitted. The last time I checked, there were roughly about 300. I also was told that USDA was quite surprised that people were not as thrilled as they thought they would be about the transitional standards. So I think it's really important for us to communicate concerns, from the people that are in the trenches as these rules get, these long-term rules get made. The DSNAP students are not included in the regular SNAP file from eScholar. This is an update that we are hoping to do. We had hoped that the DSNAP file would look just like the SNAP file and we would be able to upload it the same way, but there are required fields of the SNAP file that are not in the DSNAP file. So we were not able to make this be a quick fix before the April 1st deadline. So that is why those DSNAP students will need to be manually entered to eScholar because they are not included in that traditional SNAP file. Okay, are there any more questions? I think I've answered all the ones that have come through. And even after answering the questions, I didn't get second questions, but I didn't answer it correctly. So I think I might have actually answered it the way it was intended to be answered. Okay, I think that's all we have. I've tried really hard to keep you, how to get a copy of the DSNAP students. So each school system, so there's two ways. So initially, the team, the eScholar team with LDOE had encouraged the data managers to provide the DSNAP kids from the economically disadvantaged file and use it that way. But what we have done last week is we had some of the LDOE team actually separate that out for you and then drop the file of just the DSNAP kids into your FTP site. So contact your data manager and ask them to give you a copy of that DSNAP file that is in the FTP site. If you're a non-public school system and you don't have a traditional data management FTP site, yours was dropped in your non-public FTP site. And that will be the similar way to how we did the original PEBT files that you all had to submit back when this pandemic started. So for those of you that remember that process, it's that FTP site. And then within that, it's going to be your LEA number and then 001. So that's going to be the folder where this file is located. If you have trouble finding it, you can call me. If you need to call Jane, so if you need Jane's contact information, I can give you that as well. So our data management team is who actually dropped the file. So I don't have access to any of the FTP sites, but I can help you get in contact to who can make sure that the file is there. So we can definitely make sure that you find it. I don't have an exact date of when the SCA funds will be deposited. So I am making a small change to the allocation. So we have now received all of the attestations and I have about $12,000 that is has been declined due to some shifts in organization. So I am going to reallocate that out with the first allocation. So I'll have the amounts will change just slightly. So once I post that allocation change to the website and can get the final payments to appropriation control, they will go through their processes of double checking all the amounts to make payments to the school system. So I hope that we will have all of that to where payments will start going out next week, but I don't want to make any promises. Any other questions? I thank y'all all for joining us. I do hope that you will come on Thursday for the SCA fund training. And then also on March 17th is another big training with the Transitional Standards. And then on March 22nd for the CEP manager training. So I think those are probably the biggest trainings that are coming up related to school lunch. And then we have some trainings at the end of the month for summer feeding that are also going to be pretty beneficial. So there's no more questions. Y'all have a really great rest of the day and rest of the week. And I will hopefully see most of you on another call very soon.